So, would you like to introduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about your organisation?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
I will go first. So my name is Lucia Thomas.
And my name's Joan Ginsburg.
So we started this organisation back in 2020. So when we first started, it was because we heard that this sex education, which is a global sex education, was coming to the UK. This had actually started in England back in 2018 as a pilot scheme. Then it was coming into Wales. Then it was going to be coming in the future, which was 2020, I think. Was it September 2020?
Possibly.
It was meant to be.
It was staggered for a reason, wasn't it?
It was staggered for a reason. So it's Kim Aisherwood, who is the chair of this organisation, and she actually founded it. She has got a criminology background, and she had heard about this global sex education, but didn't realise, when she heard that it was coming to Wales, this is when she started really, getting a bit of fire in her belly, and this is when we all met, actually. We all met online. So if we just want to talk a little bit about what this global sex education is about, did you want to...
Just first tell us the name of your organisation.
Oh, we're Public Child Protection Wales. I'm ever so sorry, that was probably the most important thing. Sorry.
Yes.
So, do you want to start again? Did I babble too much
that's
then?
fine. Keep it going. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So what was uncovered, and it doesn't take a lot of uncovering really, in some ways, because this is all part of Agenda 2030. This global sex education was that it was coming from a document written by the WHO in 2010, and that was sort of the format for the education. So if you check that document out, the education for children, sexual education for children, actually starts quite incredibly at the age of 0. Because what they say, what they maintain in the WHO and in the UN as well, is that we're all sexual from birth. So unless you're prepared to swallow that, which a lot of people aren't, if you are prepared to swallow that and you think that that is actually correct, then you might have no qualms with the curriculum. But most of us, just one glimpse at the curriculum, and that was enough to bring a whole... It was like bricks falling on top of you, wasn't it?
And
it was jaw-dropping.
It's not just the sexuality being sexual from birth, they're also encouraging children to explore their gender identity. So they believe that a child as young as 0 can actually make decisions to change their birth. We've even had things coming out like, you shouldn't really decide what the sex of the baby is until the child decides, until the child is old enough to say themselves what they want to be. So, we did have this coming out in dribs and drabs. Like there was the occasional crazy interview that we would see where there would be a woman on one of the morning programmes saying about she didn't have children, she had, what did they call them? Their babies, as in like they were babies that didn't have any gender, and she was allowing her children then to decide on their gender when they got older. Now, the whole of Britain were obviously really shocked by this kind of revelation that was coming in onto the TV and thought that this woman was crazy. But now we're hearing this being, it's almost being like very much normalised.
Very much so.
Where a child is, a child isn't a boy or a girl, a child is whatever they can decide that they are.
And also it hasn't been helped by people like Paul Roux and the drags, what was it called? Drag Race? RuPaul. That's right. I never watched it. Thank you for the correction. RuPaul. For example, it's been pushed by Hollywood. It's been pushed by, for example, people like Will Smith. He had a child that was transgender. Did he have 2? If you look at the Hollywood stars as well, they well into transgenderism themselves, and they're willing to facilitate their children in it, as well, because it has to come from everywhere. This is social engineering. So you start with the kids. and you start in the schools, but also it's comprehensive. It's coming from every angle. So it's in music, it's in culture, it's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, and what we are finding as well with a lot of these, there's a lot of reading books now in the schools themselves, and it's talking about, like a young boy who wants to wear a dress, and it's talking about that this boy, he's not a boy, he's a girl, and these books are being read to children as young as 4 or 5, or I'm saying read to children. Children are encouraged to take these books home. So already it's encouraging children who might not conform to social norms, like my daughter, like myself. I was a proper tomboy growing up. Now these children now growing into this society and being in these primary schools are going to be reading books saying, oh, well, I'm a girl and I don't like dresses, so perhaps I should be a boy.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Where does that lead to next? So they'll say this.
Yeah.
So what's the next stage along this process then?
Well, it's quite devastating, really, because if you're manipulating a child from a young age to believe that perhaps they're born in the wrong body, well, what happens to them next? Like a natural progression. We do know that there is such a thing as puberty blockers, and they have been given out to youngsters. We do know about people who have got like trans regrets. They start transitioning early, and then a couple of years later they're regretting it.
In their thousands.
In their
America.
thousands. Yes, in America, but we've even got it here, haven't we?
Yes.
There was that case. What was that girl's
plenty.
name? Up in Scotland.
Sinead, there was Ricky, Tulip. There's loads by now.
Yeah, Richie Herron.
Richie Herron, yeah.
He goes by the name of Richie Tulip.
That's
Tulip
right,
on
yes.
Twitter. And he was actually
He was
a
an
young
adult.
then, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yes,
But do you know anything
exactly.
about the Tavistock Clinic
Yes.
and the CAST report?
Yeah, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Well, what came out in the CAST report was that it spiked the actual gender dysphoria in children, which the clinic opened in 1989 or something like that, and they had maybe 2 people. And then over the years, it began to spike. And about 2014-15, I think, there was a huge spike, and it was mainly girls, and there were mainly traumatized girls or autistic girls as well.
Yeah.
And these children they were in desperate need of help, but not that kind of help. And there were too many people around that seemed to just take them at face value, take their gender dysphoria at face value, and go along with their own little narrative, which was a fantasy land, a sad little fantasy land, because they couldn't cope with their own reality for whatever reason.
So what should a parent do if their child has been exposed to this material at school and then comes home and says, Mummy, Daddy, I believe I'm no longer a girl, I think I'm a boy?
Well, I was going to say I had a similar experience. Not a similar experience, really, but I did have a daughter who was a tomboy, which I mentioned earlier. Now, when she was about 10, she was actually showing signs, not because of the school, because the schools hadn't brought it in yet, but it was stuff that she was seeing on the internet. And she was coming out with little things about, like, maybe wanting to change her name on the social media, because I said that she wasn't allowed to use her own name when she was on social media. Plus, I had access to her account, so I was making sure no one was Messenger. I tried to keep her as safe as possible when she had started with her phone. Now, she was saying things like, that she'd changed her name to a boy's name. So I was getting things like, oh gosh, perhaps my girl is thinking of this ridiculous, transition agenda. So from my point of view, I was always saying to my daughter how amazing it is that she's a girl that enjoys boys. So it's like,
yes.
People dig that, the boys dig that, I used to say it myself, one of the lads tried to make it quite cool to be a tomboy rather than, born in the wrong body. And I also really reinforced the thing that I always reinforce, like, oh, my beautiful little girl. I would always mention the word girl because I think a lot of the time, and it's adults as well as children, it's repetitiveness that, in a way, like brainwashes us. So if you're told something all the time,
Yes.
then that becomes your reality then. It's like for someone who's bullied. Say someone's bullied because they're, perhaps they're being bullied for being called ugly as an example. That child's going to believe they're ugly if they're being called ugly all the time. So I believe that if you think that your daughter or your son is getting brainwashed by this agenda, then you bring that back by really reinforcing you're a special little girl, or, you know, if it's a boy,
Yes.
oh, my lovely little boy. You know, you really sort of enforce that and just show what a cool person they are, and how it's absolutely all right not to conform to social norms, but you're still a girl.
Yes.
And what would you say to the parents that think that they're being kind by affirming their new gender?
Right, well, I will say that actually, in the long run, you're not being kind, because a child's brain doesn't fully develop till they're 25. That child does not know exactly what they want when they're 15, 16. You can't cast your mind back to when you were a teenager. How many mistakes did you make? And it's absolutely fine for children to make mistakes, because they're going to, but as long as it's not going to affect them for the rest of their lives.
Not permanent ones.
Yeah, not permanent mistakes.
And the thing about the Tavistock clinic as well, the kind of research on this was pathetic. It was, I think you or I could have done a better job, because if you're giving experimental drugs to children, and the only circumstances those drugs have ever been used in the past was for special cases, children who maybe needed women who had endometriosis, or men who had this, or children who perhaps needed to grow more, they were on the small side, you know, this kind of thing. But they were not for general use. But at Tavistock, Tavistock didn't prescribe them, but they would go on to people who would, they would be sent to people who would prescribe them. So they were beginning to be used rather like sweeties, you know, unfortunately, and no one knew what the consequences would be. And Tavistock, for whatever reasons known to themselves, they did not follow these children up. So when they're 16, they go to adult services. And if they've been on a social transition road with Tavistock, a transition road of any description, and then went to adult services, Tavistock never bothered to keep data after they left the clinic. So they've got no long-term data on these children.
Yeah.
And
I think you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
People watching this, where can they go to find out what you do, find out more information about your organisation?
I'm just going to put this up. Right, www.publicchildprotectionwales.org.
Fantastic.
Okay, do you want me to repeat that?
Yeah.
www.publicchildprotectionwales.org.
Oh, thank you
This is
so
one of our
much.
T-shirts, a child's T-shirt there.
Yeah. And everyone, please remember, this isn't just Wales. It's Scotland, it's Ireland, it's France, it's Italy, it's
America, Australia.
South Africa, South America, it's everywhere.
It's a global thing.
It is global, just like the WHO and the United Nations. There's the clue.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you do, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We try.